Yeah. Okay.
Another
Welcome
minute.
everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening in this very unusual setting. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Ingrid Persaud as guest of the ESU Guildford for this our spring event. Ingrid and I both attended the same secondary school, St. Joseph's Convent in Port of Spain, and then LSE, although not at the same time. Ingrid read law at LSE and was a legal academic before taking degrees in fine art at Goldsmiths College and Central St. Martin's. She won the Commonwealth Short Story Prize in 2017 and the BBC Short Story Award in 2018. Her writing have also appeared in Granta, Prospect and Pre magazines. Ingrid lives in Barbados and in London. We at the ESU are very pleased to still be able to have Ingrid, not at Dartmouth House as we originally planned, but using this great technology, Ingrid still agreed to come and do this show for us, so we're eternally grateful. We are very passionate at the ESU about promoting oracy via our public speaking competitions, our debating, and our Discover Your Voice programs, and that's mainly in secondary and in primary schools. So we deal with a range of young people, and we also have international public speaking competitions. So I thank you very much, all of you are online and taking part in this session. Any donations we receive will go towards the charitable work that the ESU does, which is very close to our hearts. And it gives me great pleasure now to hand over to Luke, who will chair the meeting this evening. Thank you, Luke.
Great. Yeah, well, it's a pleasure to be here with you all online. And I mean, just to get us in the flow, Ingrid, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what it's like launching a book in the time of coronavirus.
It's a very strange thing, Luke, and thank you all for coming. So instead of meeting readers and talking, you know, we have to do this odd thing where we're separated. I think there's a lot of fear around launching a book at this time that will think without a trace, because you're at a time where people can't go to bookstores. So it's only if your book is particularly well-known or your well-known name that comes up on Amazon or one of the other platforms you use. So yeah, it's a
challenge.
It's a challenging time.
Yeah, we're finding that at Granta, which publishes books as well. It's just a strange, different time. That's why it's important. Everyone here, you know, if you enjoy the talk, you enjoy the readings, please do buy a copy of Love After Love, which is out now, available with Faber. Luckily, people are still doing deliveries. Waterstones will deliver. The Hive in the UK will deliver you the book from your local independent bookshop. Amazon, I hear, is back on deliveries. And you can also get this book in audiobook format, and Ingrid has recorded the audio herself. You're going to get a taster this evening of her reading skills. She's very good, I think. So that's another lovely way to read and experience this book. The other night at the launch, Louisa Joyner, Ingrid's editor, called Love After Love a vacation in a book. And I think that's a really good way of putting it in this time. You know, as we're coming up on Easter, everyone wants to get away. We can't. We're all in isolation. Just reading this book, it'll take you places, and it really is an escape. It's a pleasure. So I love this book, and I know you all will as well. But before we get into the readings, it looks like a few people are still trickling in. Ingrid, as a writer, you know a lot about self-isolation, being on your own in a room, you know, not leaving it, not seeing people. What tips do you have for the audience about how to get through this time, how to use their time?
So first of all, don't be scared. It's possible to not just survive, but to thrive in an environment like this. The silence is an unusual opportunity to enjoy one's own company, to discover things about yourself that you would never otherwise do. So it's an incredible opportunity rather than a crisis. I hope for those of us who are well and at home.
Yeah, there can be positives too. That's good to keep in mind. Well, Ingrid, would you be able to lead us off maybe with a reading from
Sure.
Love After? Just give us a flavor of the book.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to start with a reading that comes from the beginning of the book. The book is told by three narrators: Betty, her son Solo, and their lodger, Mr. Chayton. And the first bit I'm going to read is where Betty is interacting with her husband Sunil, and then the second little bit of this first reading will be Mr. Chayton moving into Betty's home to become a lodger. In tutus, I dished out the stew chicken, vegetable rice, and green salad. Sunil used the fork like it was a shovel. When he's like this, anything can become an argument, and any argument can become a fight. Like salt cheap, but I hardly put salt in the food. He rocked back in his chair. If looks could kill. You telling me you cooked this chicken and didn't put one set of salt in the pot? Silence. So what I tasting? Something must be wrong with my mouth. How I tasting salt so? You know my pressure high and you giving me salt? Like you want to kill me, eh? I was careless. I'd left the rolling pin on the drain board, easy reach of Sunil's chair. That rolling pin might have hit the wall or the bed or the chair, but it found me. Doctor said the radius and ulna snapped in two. My arm was in a cast when we buried Sunil a week later. At the funeral, I told people it was no big deal. I must stop being so careless with ladders. But I took half and left half. People used to look at me and Sunil and say, Betty girl, you're real lucky. In my head, I wanted to ask if they making joke. Lucky? That man only give love you can feel. He cough you down? Honeymoon. He give you a black eye? True love in your tail. He break your hand? A love letter. He put you in hospital for a week? Love will stay the course. He take a knife and stab your leg? Until death do us part.
So that's wonderful. I absolutely love the voices. That's just a taster of what you get in the audiobook. So, you know.
Do you want me to read the second bit or not?
Yeah, do.
Okay. So the second bit is Mr. Chayton's voice. And the only reason I'd like to do this is because it kind of helps set up all the voices for you.
Great.
Miss Betty declared she was leaving the gentleman to sort out everything and going to take her 5 minutes. Solo put himself in charge of settling me into the house. I was trying to unpack, but the boy kept calling me. Could he show me his room? 2 minutes later, he wanted to explain how to operate the TV. I had barely packed a drawer when he demanded I inspect the kitchen. What to do? He was only being friendly. Solo showed me everything, down to turning on the water heater if there wasn't enough hot water in the pipe. He was a completely different child from the morning they'd stopped to give me a drop. A right little chatterbox. Mr. Chayton, is that the last box you're bringing up? Yes, you stay. There's nothing else to bring. Ouch, oh geez and peas, that hurt. I had stumped my so-and-so toe on the sharp edge of the concrete step. Books tumbled out the box I was carrying. A torchlight went clanking down the steps. Solo rushed to help. You all right, Mr. Chayton? You all right? My toe, damn. That nail going to turn blue. I hit it and then the torch dropped on top it. The boy ran after the torch and scooped up the books. You want ice to put on your toe?
Don't worry, I'll manage. These steps are very dangerous. My daddy fell down these same steps and died right here. For true? Right here? I don't remember anything because I was small, but I know he fell down. I'm sorry. Sometimes he used to drink, get drunk, and fall down. You mustn't say that about your father. But Mommy told me that what happened. I hoped Miss Betty wasn't listening. Her window was open, so unless she was sleeping hard, she must have heard. Children these days. I'm sure your father was a good man. Just please be very, very, very careful on the steps, okay? Especially if you come home drunk. You're not going to see me drunk. I take my carib or a stag now and then, but I'm not a drinker. And Solo, you must be careful on this step too. If I knew about your daddy's accident, I wouldn't have let you run up and down with boxes. I'm accustomed to these steps. Nothing will happen to me. He bent down and picked up a large plastic bag. A boy in my class said he does thief carrot beer from the fridge and drink it in the backyard. I hope you never do that. Mommy said that's the one thing she will give me licks for. I could do anything but that. It took the two of us till evening to put everything in place. Of course, I could have done it much faster, but Solo refused to leave my side. I don't mind, and although this boy's blabbing nonstop, half the time he's muttering to himself. At dinner, Miss Betty acted like she hadn't heard what Solo said about his father. Still, it bothered me. People like to run their mouth, especially when it's nothing to do with them. No, I wouldn't want that for these two. About 8:30, I asked Solo, please, let's knock off for the day. What wasn't put away could wait. Solo, you can help me again, but not too early. It's Sunday tomorrow. Okay, I won't come in your room and wake you up then. Before you go, come let me whisper something in your ears. He smiled and came close. You mustn't go around telling people that your father used to drink. It doesn't sound nice, especially since he's passed. And it will make your mom cry. He leaned into my ear and whispered back, my mommy wouldn't cry for that.
Little mini round of applause. Everyone is applauding back home.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love those readings, and the way you selected those, you kind of give us a glimpse of the three very distinct voices that take up this novel. And you tell it in these alternating voices. We hear from young Solo, we hear from Mr. Chetan, and we hear from Miss Betty. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of getting to know these characters and balancing their voices throughout the book?
Getting to know them, the first voice to come to me was Solo's voice. And in fact, it's the extract that's currently online with Granta magazine. It's a chapter where Solo visits a prostitute, and that was the first thing I wrote. And it was about a young man in a lot of pain who exchanges emotional pain for physical pain. And I wrote that, and I don't know where that came from, but I wrote that and started thinking about how someone might arrive at that much emotional pain. And then I was really kind of working backwards and forwards with his voice. So he was the strongest and first voice. And I thought the book would be only about him. And the other characters sort of presented themselves as I explored his story. Mr. Chetan was probably the easiest to write, in the sense that he's just somebody you'd want to meet. somebody you'd want to have in your life. So he was a nice person. And the hardest voice was the female voice. And that's a very strange thing to admit, but I think it was easier as a woman. We're often asked to, we're often not admitted to lots of places. And so we project ourselves into those spaces and places and roles. And so I could project myself into being a man, a gay man or a young man. And I have 2 sons. So I have a lot of testosterone around me. But the female voice, I had to really dig deep and think hard about those. And think about this, the very strong women I have in my life. My mother is one of those gentle but strong voices that I hear. Not that she's in the book, but to kind of think of role models of people that I can use.
Sort of what you drew on. I mean, it's a book about love. It's called Love After Love, and I think we get very much that sense of how relationships are so integral to that, to love and to family, and the relationships between these 3 characters kind of create the narrative force of the whole book, and it takes us to all these different places. But it's often a book, about the underside of love, what love can make us do, or what the lack of love does to us. And you're saying about writing solo and writing this really difficult scene. In this book, you treat toxic masculinity, you talk about domestic abuse, about self-harm. How as a writer do you approach those sort of big and difficult topics?
I guess, first of all, I don't set out to explore difficult topics. I think it is enough that those things present themselves in the book. So I hope I'm not heavy-handed with any of those things. It is enough that the characters go through them. I do a lot of research, obviously. I'm always saying, if I die, I need to, before I die, I need to appoint someone to erase my internet history, because I write rather well about a gay man's sex life, and I really shouldn't. And I really, really like some of that to leave my my legacy.
Yeah, fair enough. What one of the main pleasures of the book for me reading it was your use of language and idiom and all the Trini idioms and phrases that you work into the book. I mean, what are some of your favorite idioms that you sort of got in there?
Better belly bust and food waste is what we use often in our house. As we eat the next piece of pizza that we shouldn't. My navel string buried here is one I use a lot to talk about one's home and the draw of one's home. What other ones? Gosh, there's so many. Two Borat can't live in one house. Two strong characters cannot be in the same house.
Yeah, there's this sort of just magic to the language and the sort of, that the truth that comes with these phrases that have been passed down, but they're just in the sort of vibrant, there's a vibrant lyricism to them. Why was it important to you to write this book in a genuine Trinidadian voice?
So the characters are Trinidadian, the setting is Trinidad, and therefore they couldn't speak in anything other than this voice. So to give them anything else would have been inauthentic. But also it is my writer's voice. I'm a Trini, and it is the voice I feel comfortable with. I see it as perfectly valid voice to use and an English to use. It's not bad English. It is a particular English, and it's I think it reads easily. And although you may not know every single word, usually from the context you'll be able to figure out what it means. So, for example, there's a scene about Betty going to be jarried. So, unless you're a Trini, you won't know about being jarried. And it's a particular, even not just Trini, but a Trini Indian, thing to do. But I describe, you go to a holy man, he performs a ritual. It involves chanting some holy words, going through particular rituals, and at the end of it, you should be rid of your whatever bad spirits are kind of clinging on to you. Well, how different is that from an exorcism? So it's really quite things that we understand. It's just simply given different names and a different context, but it's things you've heard of and know.
Yeah, I think it comes alive, and coming from a perspective that I read this never having been to Trinidad, but I despite the prose, seeing all these words I didn't know, I felt it was very easy to read, and it just sort of flowed really well and felt natural. And I found it to be a sort of discovery to read the book, which I really enjoyed that. So you were sort of born and raised in Trinidad, but you've written this book from away from London and Barbados. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, writing about Trinidad, a place you obviously know so well, but writing about it from that distance perspective? Does a bit of nostalgia creep in, or does that allow you to be sort of more critical and objective than you might have been if you were still there?
So I think there are two parts to your question. I'll answer the second part first. The issue of nostalgia. So that is always the problem when you're writing from far, that nostalgia will creep into the work, that will have some sort of sickly sweet sentimentality that doesn't reflect the place. And I was very conscious of that. And the way I try to position myself is I'm an outsider insider. And being an outsider, writing from afar gives me some critical leeway to consider the place. And I have to make use of that critical leeway. But yet I write with an insider's love of the place. So I think that tempers, my voice somewhat. The other part of your question, how do you write when you are far away from a place and you're writing from memory largely? And it's not just memory of a landscape, it's memory of a language and overheard phrases and intonations of, my grandmother or my uncles and aunts. And that was very difficult, but incredibly wonderful to be able to indulge in going back to that language and enjoying it. But then the landscape, I had this fear after someone told me that there was a novel that came out in Jamaica and the person had one line in it that destroyed their credibility completely. And it was that one of the characters looked out of their window in Kingston and saw the Blue Mountains. And since that is physically impossible to have done, they decided that the rest of the book had to be crap, right? Because this person hadn't done their homework. And so I lived in absolute fear that there would be some character would do something and it would be, you know, just physically impossible or in the wrong place. So I would check everything I did using Google Maps, which
did you?
I'm willing to admit, but I did. So I'd use Google Maps, Google Earth, and then when I could, I would go back to Trinidad for short periods of time, and actually, you know, go to the sites. So there's a moment where Mr. Chayton is picnicking on San Fernando Hill, and he's sitting on a bench, and he talks about a particular view. And I had to go back and find the bench and sit and get the view. And only then I could be sure that actually I'd done my job properly.
You were following your own characters around Trinidad when you kind of made those visits.
Yes, I followed my characters around, and that's, you know, that's hilarious. Like, you're like, oh my God, now I'm Betty, you know, and I'm following, you know, this particular trail, or, you know, I'm whoever, I'm solo getting a doubles or something. It's, it was weird shadowing my characters around, because they feel like real people after you've lived with them, you know. They feel very real to me, which, you know, I mustn't tell many people on Zoom.
In the book, I think, you know, they feel real, and I think because you have invested them with that sense of a real lived experience, and that sort of depth of character which really shines. Just kind of thinking more on that topic of landscape and the diversity of place that you've gotten into the book. You know, we seem to travel around and see so much of Trinidad, but you also get on very different aspects of Trinidadian life and heritage. For instance, you write about Kali worship, and you show West Indian wedding. Can you talk to us a little bit about writing about those aspects of Trinidadian life?
So I wrote, so there's one bit of it where Betty goes to the ceremony before a Hindu ceremony takes place. So it's in the days before. Oh, that wasn't what you asked me about, but you did mention wedding, and that's what came to mind. So, you know, I go through the, I get her into a little village, and they're playing the tassa drums, and they're improvising to do the customs that would have been done in India in the 19th century if you were following this particular, as we are, particular traditions. So yeah, there was a lot of research to kind of get that right. And then the Kali worship, which is what you specifically asked me about. I got to a place with Betty where she needed, she's a religious person, but her particular religion wasn't giving her what she needed. And she was looking for some other form of catharsis. And I thought, you know, Kali is this incredibly strong female energy, much misunderstood and much maligned. But in my research about her, I just kept thinking more and more, this is the kind of energy that would work for my character. And I got really into Kali research. And the problem when you fall in love with your research is that you put too much of it into the book. And so in an early draft of the book that I gave my agent, there was a lot more about Kali. And she, you know, she just stripped it back. She said, you know, it's great, but it's not serving the book, you know, all the other stuff. So I had to take it out, and I think I'll return to it at some point. I don't know when, but I know it'll be there. It's there was just so much vibrancy and life, and a giving over to dance and to music, and of course in Trinidad, if you ask anyone about Kali, they, you know, it's, ooh, that's devil worshipping. They they'll say things like, you know, they drink people blood, which is all not true. But there are all these myths we use, and that's partly because Kali worship is a very direct form of worship. There's no intermediary of a priest or a pundit, or so you access your goddess directly, and few religions allow you to access God without an intermediary.
Yeah, and that's partly the fascination of it, both kind of as a reader and I imagine as a writer.
Yes, very much, very much.
At this point, I wonder if you could do another short reading for us, just to get us back into the world of Love After Love.
So the second reading I'm going to do is, I'm just going to prepare you. It's a little bit sad, okay, and it's looking, it comes quite sort of 3/4 of the way into the book, and it's solo. He's in New York, and he's in self-exile and just not really functioning well, and he has a terrible episode, and I'm just going to read from some of that. My breathing slowed. With the first cut across, I instantly felt an ease up. Only with this could I relax myself. I moved down my arm towards my wrist, forming a pretty pattern of short, parallel lines of blood. If you've never cut, you won't understand the pure relief that flowed with the blood. A lot of blood. I lay back on the bed and the tears wouldn't stop. Faces swarmed before my eyes. Mammy, Daddy, Mr. Chaitan, Uncle Harry. I'm so sorry, but I've had enough licks. I'm done. I can't take no more pressure. Uncle Harry interrupted. He panicked. I heard a lot of shouting. I think Ian drove. Uncle Harry kept asking me what had gone undone. I didn't have the strength to explain, and he wouldn't understand. Even if I wanted to speak, my throat and chest had grabbed hold of my words. As we walked through the main hospital doors into emergency, Uncle Harry held me tight. Listen good. When we go inside, I'm handing them Ian's ID card. You hear me? If they put your card in the system and anything suspicious come up, police go reach one time. You understand me? Tell me you understand. I didn't respond. Ian, give me your wallet. Don't look at me so. Just do it quick. The whole wallet? Hurry up, man. I have to do all the thinking in this family. The Haitian nurse looking after me said I'd only just missed an artery. I missed. I fucking missed. 6 hours, 6 stitches on the biggest cut, 4 on another, and a pile of leaflets later, Catherine was unlocking the door for us. She gave me a hug. I didn't hug back. I still hadn't spoken to either Harry, Uncle Harry, or Ian, not even to say thanks. Especially not to say thanks. How was I supposed to face them? I was so ashamed. They knew everything, had seen everything. And to put them through emergency,
I never wanted that. Never. My mess took up the whole night, and in a couple hours, they had to go to work. All because of me. I wanted to go to work too. I wouldn't have to think, but even the weather was vexed with me because a snowstorm hit the city and the whole of New York shut down. I was waiting for Uncle Harry to say he can't have me in the house again after what I did. Instead, he parked himself in a chair and said he was there in case I needed anything. I said I was fine, but he didn't budge.
Wow. Yeah, it's a harrowing part of the book, Ingrid. Can you tell us what it's like to write a character who's driven to this point of despair as Solo, as you've just depicted him? I mean, how do you get into his mind when he's at that point?
It's not a pleasant experience. So, the first part is you do all the research, and the research itself is harrowing, going into the psychological aspects of depression and self-harm. And then you have to put all of it aside and try to get into the head of the character. And when I was writing the voices, I actually had to write all of one voice for quite a period of time. I couldn't, the book is structured where they're alternating chapters and the voices are woven in, but I didn't write it like that. I wrote sort of Solo's voice for an extended period to get into the feeling of how he arrived at this space of feeling so depressed that he turned the pain in on himself. And I was talking to another writer recently about this, and the toll it takes on our families as well, because when we go into this space, nothing else matters, and we're in this character, and we have to stay in the character. And even when I break for lunch to get my sandwich, I'm still thinking about him, and I go back. And so for a period of time, you live this voice and you live their agony, and it's hard. It takes its toll on not just the writer, but on the people around the writer. Yeah. So this is by way of saying sorry to my family.
It makes me think of this line from a review in the Independent about the book which just came out, where the writer says, despite the anguish, Love After Love is also a book about loyalty, resilience, and the best of human behavior. As Betty says, it's only when you're at the bottom of the well and calling for help that you find guys.
Sorry, you there's some voices that are.
Oh yeah, there's just someone else came in. But the point I was making was, there's something about taking these characters to a point of despair that allows us as readers, I think, to discover something about them and in those around them. And what really comes through in that scene you just read about Solo is the family that he has around him, his uncles and his cousins, and the community that is there, even if he can't see it himself. Can you talk a little bit about writing about community and that those relationships which pervade the book?
So I think for a lot of the characters, well, for all of the characters, it's a journey which is partly reflected in the title of the book. So, the title is from Derek Walcott's poem, Love After Love, which is about a journey of self-love where he says you're a stranger to yourself, and he calls you back to yourself. Sit, have wine, have bread, feast on yourself. And it is only through that discovery of self that one can engage meaningfully with community. And so all of the characters don't really understand what they're doing, but they're always looking for connections. Aren't we all? You know, so the book is about them looking for those connections and trying to make them. And I guess the point of this particular book is that you'll find those connections in places you least expect them. So sometimes it'll be your relatives, but other times it'll be the family around you, the people that you allow into your life, that you take a risk on.
I just want to ask one more question before we sort of open up to the digital room for people to ask their own questions, which I wanted to ask you about the food in this book. I mean, there are lines and passages in the book which are literally mouth-watering cooking scenes written with a level of detail. It's almost like you want to write down the recipe as you read. And that seems to be a very important part of Trini culture. We were saying just before this started that right now there's rioting in Trinidad about the lockdown, not because people can't get to the pharmacy, but because they can't get their doubles. Can you talk about the importance of food in Trinidad?
So, you know, Trini people, and I think the Trini people who are listening into this chat will agree, we like our food. And if we're getting together, it is a line usually defined by the food. So we go in for a pilau line, or we go in for shark and bake, or let's make a lime and go for doubles. You know, so there's so the coming together and the food are synonymous. And I just, you know, that's just part of who we are. So it had to come out in the book. And there are pivotal moments in the book which turn on food. And again, I didn't set out for this to happen. It's just that it was naturally what they would do. They would naturally go for shark and bake at Maracas at some point, because you do, you know. So the food moments were many, and when I visited Trinidad, I also, of course, had to follow my characters in these food moments, just to check if, you know, the vendors were still where I thought they were. So, you know, Richard's shack on Maracas Beach is still functioning, and the shadow benny sauce that goes with the fish shark and bake is still amazing. And you know, the doubles on Independence Square or in Currap, still very good. So yeah,
worth writing a novel to go on that food tour.
Particularly, you know, at the time of this, I'm in London, and obviously we can't go out to eat anything. So, you know, my kids and I have been cooking for, you know, days and days, and we're all now fed up of our own food, and we just dare not talk about food in the house, because we'll just be like, oh, we could really use some of, you know, something else right now.
Something out of the book. Okay, well, at this point, why don't we, I guess, unmute the room so people can ask their own questions. Does anyone have a question for Ingrid?
I have a question.
I have a question as well. Go first. The person that said before me, let them go first.
You could just say your name so that we know who you are.
I'm Natasha.
Okay, let me find
Nat G.
Nat G.
I haven't got a video on because I look awful and I'm wearing headphones.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, I won't try to find you.
But just to say,
All
I've
right.
read your book and I think it's amazing. It was so transporting and just absolutely fabulous. I enjoyed every page, every line. So thank you, first of all. But I'm really intrigued by you and your history because from what I've read, you were in the legal profession for years. And then you did fine art, and then you went into writing. So at what point did you feel the urge to start writing? Did you think you were always a writer, and how did you get there?
So I came to writing by the scenic route, as you mentioned. So I started off with law because I'm a good Trini. And you either be a lawyer, doctor, or a mistake, failure. So I did that, and I soon discovered that what I liked doing was not practice, but hanging out at university. So I hung out at university and I taught law, and then there was a time in my life when I thought I needed something else, something different, and I did this short course, foundation course in fine art, and next thing I knew, I was quitting my job and going back to school as an undergraduate and doing fine art. So that was kind of way out there, but it was definitely kind of me searching for a creative outlet. And then finally, the writing came because I moved to Barbados, and when our kids were 6.5, we've been living there more time than in the UK. And I felt I couldn't do the sort of art I was doing in London there. And I started to write instead, just a blog called Notes from a Small Rock. And I set myself the task of writing a 900-word essay that was published every Friday by 10 a.m. And so whatever happened in my life, I had to do that, and I was bringing up kids and stuff. So that's how the writing kind of started. But there was writing all the way through. So, with law, you're working with language. And in my art, I did a lot of work with text and image, or text as image. So I've never strayed from words. I've just simply taken a long time to find where I'd be happiest using them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Really interesting. Thank you.
Next question. We had someone else who was asking something.
Can I ask? My name's Brooke. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I just want to know how tough to write the book.
So there was an echo, but I think you asked how long it took to write the book.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was that's not something I can do again, I think. So I took a year to write 20,000 words, and that is not a lot of words for a year, but it was kind of feeling my way into the book, doing research, getting to know the characters. And then I got an agent, and really fantastic woman, and she said, love these 20,000 words, and when can I get the rest of the book? Because I, of course, said this was merely a sample of the writing as opposed to all the writing. And I said, oh, this is October. I said, you can have it before the year is over. And so then I had to go home and write the damn book. So I went home and I sat at my desk and I didn't get up until it was finished. and I delivered it at 4 p.m. on the 31st of December. So I met my deadline. And that was the first draft. So the first draft took, about 18 months. And then there was sort of 2 months of back and forth editing with my agent, and then we shopped the book. So maybe 6 weeks. So relatively short period of time, I think, for novels. And I don't plan to, be a novel a year or anything like that. I think, good work takes time. Not that I'm waiting for a muse to show up, who might be self-isolating somewhere away from me, but I'm going to, I write every day, and I hope that the ideas will coagulate enough for the next book.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ingrid Jewel Ford from Barbados. Can't wait.
Oh, Jewel, hi. Gosh, this is my pal.
I don't have my video on because I'm working from home, so I'm wearing what I like to call business pajamas.
Excellent, excellent.
I wanted to find out from you, what is the difference, or how similar are the characters in Love After Love to your first book, If I Never Went Home, which I absolutely love. And if you've never read it, get yourself a copy. It is phenomenal.
Okay, so two things. So Jill brings up, if you go on Amazon, you'll find a book called If I Never Went Home Again. And this is a self-published book that I did during my time in Barbados. And it's lovely that you mentioned it. Thank you very much. But because it's self-published, it doesn't count in the publishing world, as you can imagine. And I've withdrawn it. So there's a secondary market. Apparently, somebody put, you can buy this copy for $990 or something ridiculous. If you're desperate to read it, I have a PDF somewhere. Okay. But it's it's an interesting lesson, because there's a reason why your early stuff should not be published. You're thinking through things, you're working stuff out, and it's very kind of you to say, nice things about it. But I wouldn't write it now. I've learned so much since then. And in terms of the characters, no, I don't think they bear any relation to that. I actually wrote another novel before this one, which I dumped completely, because at the end of it, it wasn't any good. And that was the truth. And I had to face that. And it's really, really hard to look at 100,000 words you've written and say it's just not good enough. So that was a difficult thing to do. But what was interesting is, out of that, I did get the characters. So the characters were in that discarded novel, but they were very different. Okay. So, they kind of, maybe I was thinking about them, for so long that's why it was so easy, in a sense, to find their voices later on, because I was always thinking about them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, I have one.
Great, go ahead.
Hi, Ingrid. It's Shakira. I have no video from me either.
Oh
Shakira from
my
Barbados.
gosh. These are my wonderful friends from Barbados. Thank you. And Shakira is an amazing writer. Shakira Bourne, look up her stuff. You'll find it.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. But I was wondering, I know that your book went to auction, but I'm wondering what made you choose Faber and Faber? Like, how did they differentiate themselves from the other publishers?
So, Shakira, having a choice of publishers is a new experience for someone, like me. So I had a lot of fun. I didn't understand, that they were pitching to me rather than me pitching to them. So, it was all a learning curve. The very first pitch I went to, they had a table laid out with cups of tea, and in the middle was a freshly baked sweetbread, just like Mr. Cheaton would have done. And this particular publisher had gone out into North London and found coconut and grated, fresh coconut, and made this sweetbread. It was amazing.
Wow.
And then when I was leaving, they gave me a bottle of rum, and on the label it said Persaud rum. And then, I went to another publishing house for another pitch, and they had already done a mock-up of what the book might look like on the inside and the covers and stuff. It was so there was this red carpet being laid out by my agent for me to go to all these places, and I was just collecting all these gifts along the way, and that was really nice. So Faber, I went to the Faber meeting, and it's in Bloomsbury. It's you walk into to their building, and you think that T.S. Eliot is going to be writing in a room just off the stairs somewhere. It's just wonderfully atmospheric place. But anyway, I go into this grand room, and we're all sitting around this table. There's no sweetbread. They haven't made. They have bought pastries from some, very normal bakery. So, 1 point loss there already. But they put things strategically around the room. And so when I wasn't talking to anyone, if I lifted my eyes and looked around the room, all I saw was Derek Walcott everywhere. There's Derek Walcott's poetry, Derek Walcott this, Derek Walcott that. And there was I, with love after love. So it was like these subliminal messages coming through. And the discussion was just incredible. So the woman who became my editor, Louisa Joyner, she was just so sharp and thoughtful, and I just knew that if I could get someone so brilliant looking into my work, she would make it into something really amazing. And we had this really in-depth conversation, which was more like an editorial meeting than a pitch. And they had done a really nice cover as well. And, we ended up asking the designer to come into the room and discuss some things with us. And it just went much further than other meetings went. And then, the bids came in, and they weren't the highest bid. They were near, but they weren't the highest. But I knew they were the right people for me. They were small, independent, flexible. I really liked all those things. They were committed, on board. I knew the team. And I just feel that that choice has been vindicated by the book coming out in this really difficult climate, because I'm not just one book of hundreds coming out for Faber. I'm one of, only a few books they take on. So I have a huge Faber team behind the book who are being very nimble and creative and trying ways to get the book out there and known and in readers' hands. So, just incredibly lucky.
Thank you, Ingrid. I have a big smile on my face. I know you can't see it, but I'm so happy, and I'm looking forward to reading this book.
Thank you. And everybody remember Shakira Bourne as well, because her work is very, very good.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions?
Hi, I'd like to ask a question. Hi, Ingrid. It's Alison Tyndall. Hi.
Do you have your video on, Alison?
Yes, it is on. Yeah. So
Okay, let me find you.
you. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Hi there. Hi.
Yeah. Yes. Hi. Congratulations on this book. I'm just bowled over by the fact that you've done so amazingly well with it, and you've got these amazing reviews. As someone myself who has thought about writing and started and stopped and started and stopped, what tips do you have for me? How could I get started?
So the way I think there are two things. One is that you have to take all your circumstances into account and then decide if you're committed to the writing, when in your day or evening can you write? And whatever time that is, then make it sacred. So, Max Porter talks about writing with his kids all around, and he, like a young baby. And so he could only write in these very short snatches of 30 minutes. So he wrote in 30 minutes, and that's what he did. And I think you have to make that promise to yourself. And it's that 30 minutes or that 15 minutes, and it's your time for your writing. And your time for your writing doesn't necessarily mean you're going to achieve X number of words in that time. You're going to be devoted to your writing. So whatever it takes to get you into that space. So if it's a bit of research that needs to be done, reading a particular author or thinking about something, then do it. So it's about making that space sacred, making that commitment to yourself. And then the second part, I think, which I try to remember, is that the muse doesn't need to show up. You just have to work. And a lot of what you write may be crap, and you have to accept that. And, like me, you might write 100,000 words that are crap, and you need to accept that. And so it's an unforgiving thing, writing. It's there are no easy rewards with it. You just have to kind of keep doing it, and it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the more you get better at it, or at least better at knowing when you're not doing good work, so that you can edit yourself. And I haven't been able to do it, but lots of people swear by writers' retreats, workshops. But it just depends on your life. My circumstances couldn't accommodate that. I had kids, growing up. But if you can, it just means you're taking time out of your ordinary life, and you're prioritizing your writing. So prioritize what you love, and if the writing is what you love, then that's what you do. I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Well, I think this may be all the time we have for the event tonight. I just wanted to say, again, if you can, you must buy this book. You will not regret it. In these times, we all need to be transported, and this book is nothing if not transporting. So, get it delivery in any way you can, but you must buy it.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. And thank you all so much. I know that, in one way you have lots of time on your hands because you're a captive audience in your home. but on the other, I'm sure that you've been invited to a million Google Hangouts and Zoom, meetings, etc. So thank you for listening in this evening. I hope it was fun. There'll be, there's stuff on the internet. I've read bits of it that you can find if you like. And good luck with your own journeys into writing.
Thank you.
That's great.
Same
For
to
the
you.
clap.
Thank you very much to
Thank you.
Ingrid for
Thank
joining us on this online platform, despite not being at Dartmouth House. It was really, really great and interesting, and looking and listening to your journey of writing. And thank you, Luke, for chairing this great meeting. And I just want to remind everyone, as Luke said, to buy the book. We'll send you all a link to where you can purchase the book. And please, any donations to the SU would be lovely to have, as we do such fantastic work with young people in terms of debating and public speaking and performing Shakespeare. So Ingrid, once again, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your time in England.
Yes.
And
Bye-bye.
we'll get you soon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.